The idea now that you've got this central database with a state and governments that don't want to engage with the public, they hate the public, they're scared of the public, they think the public should just be told what to do, that we're in an emergency for the climate, be quiet, shut up, we're doing it. We need to all get together and have a big umbrella organisation where we can have campaigners, people of faith, secular. It doesn't matter if you come from the left or the right, those things are not important. It's the public in the last 100 years, for instance, that has helped transform things with civil rights and all sorts of things. It's not the smart people writing legislation. So I think that gives me hope, the sense of the belief in what's possible, but also in protecting what's so valuable. So when we fought back against the jab mandates and the vaccine passports, they said, good luck, but I don't think you're going to win that. And the question is how we can always make sure that we can have as much of the freedom and democracy and privacy, because it's not given to us by these smart people, right? This is ours. It belongs to all of us, right? Our world, our nation, our freedom. Why should the state be able to see everything about what we do, how we spend our money, where we go on holiday, where we go at home, what we say online? You can't just listen to people's telephone conversations without a warrant. You have to have a warrant. You have to have a reason. We need the same thing in the digital arena. We need protections. We need to be able to not have an option that you can still participate in society without doing any of these things.
Hello and welcome to another episode of You're the Voice. And I have the honor of being here with an old friend, Alan Miller. Hey, Alan.
Hi, Expat. Thanks for having me here.
Thanks for joining me. And this has been a long time coming. Like, we've been wanting to talk for a long time and it hasn't happened. And we went through different cycles of shenanigans in the world, like COVID and climate and all this bullshit. And now we're into the digital idea. And I'm like, okay, we got to do this. Alan is all over this. He's in the streets. And I want to hear from you because you are relentless. I just love what you do. And I'm gonna, I'm gonna start with a quick intro just for my audience that don't know who you are, and then I want to give you the floor to update us on what you're doing and where we're at in the UK. Okay?
Yeah. Right.
All right. So Alan is the founder of and the chair of Together. The Together Association is committed to ensuring the public is at the heart of politics instead of corrupted politicians. Together has changed national policy and is committed to open public debate, upholding freedom, liberties, and democratic accountability. So Alan, a bit of background about you. Can you share with us what led you to now, and then take us to what's happening these days in the UK?
Yeah, thanks. My background is in hospitality and events. I used to put on big dance parties around the world, like acid house parties. And then when it became legalized, we had bars and clubs and events. I was one of the people who helped transform. I co-founded a place called the Old Truman Brewery in London, and we had hundreds of businesses and a big bar. And it was all about bringing people together. It was about creating hubs of people day and night. And it was, in the end, it was very successful. But what we after 20 years, what happened was there was a big discussion about public health and that the public are a bit of a problem. And when they get together, they're like conveyors or infectors of things. And they took the metaphor of infections and everything. It was everything bad. And they went on the assault, and they did that through the police saying there just weren't enough resources, and we had to sort of limit nighttime and hospitality activity. And I say all of that just to say it gave me a little glimmer and a glimpse of the public sector discussion and what was going on with policymakers. And we created an organization to lobby for nightlife, which we set up and I chaired and we ran for 6 years, to save venues, to talk to people like mayors and the government and the Home Office. And we really managed to convince many people in Britain and around the world. I spoke internationally a lot of places. And many cities know very well that night and day brings people together, brings income, brings benefits and value. And we kind of transformed the discussion until when what happened with COVID, and then the lockdowns. And basically, we were speaking to the government. It was Boris's government at the time. And we were kind of talking about industry and how we could handle things and everything. And then the shutters came down. And I did some campaigning called Open for All, which was getting thousands of hospitality venues, small bars, big chains, venues, nightclubs saying, we would never ask for papers, please. In Britain, there was a tradition, although we did have national ID cards for a while, but Winston Churchill got rid of them after the Second World War in 1952.
Really? I didn't know that about the history.
Yeah, so we had them for a while during the war, and he said, "I'm going to we should not have them in peacetime and set you free." And then there's been a big debate for quite a long time with people like Tony Blair and the Tony Blair Institute pushing from the noughties, from the 2000s onwards. And it looked like it was beginning to happen in 2006. And a lot after the 9/11 and the terror attacks, there was a big push for what they called against the war on terror, like a war on terror. But many things happen in terms of civil liberties. We don't have time to discuss them now, but that was kind of a preemptor for some things. And in this attempt to get digital ID, and it seemed like Tony Blair always has anything that happens, he's got a one response, which is let's get ID or digital ID. But in Britain in 2010, it was turned away by the government. At the time, it was actually a joint government. And in the middle of all this that happened with the lockdowns, and then we were doing this campaign called Open for All against digital ID vaccine passports. They called them vaccine passports. They had different names in different countries, as you know. I know you know all this, but just, green cards in some places. In places like the States, in New York to begin with, they did not ask for them, but then they did ask for them. And we didn't ask them, they insisted on them, which is why I ended up only meeting people in parks and outside in New York when I was there. And I was so disappointed with them. But all of this led to a situation where many of us were campaigning in Britain individually, and we were fighting for certain things until Boris Johnson said on what he called freedom, we're going to have Freedom Day. And by the way, we're going to have vaccine passports. And so it was this Freedom Day in 2021, and it was like, the lockdowns have been bad and we think we can come out of them, but we're going to have vaccine passports. And I said my phone was ringing crazily, and we worked with a lot of different campaign groups. I knew many of them now. We'd met people, and we said, they're not listening to anyone. And they're saying the trade industry, hospitality, that you would say this because you just want to kill people. And they had a reason for everyone saying things. And I said, we need to all get together and have a big umbrella organization where we can have campaigners, people of faith, secular. It doesn't matter if you come from the left or the right or the center, whatever all those things right now, those things are not important. We need to organize against this. And basically we had 6 key principles. We met in a nightclub, funnily enough. We met 6 key principles. Many people that you know and many of your audiences will know and recognize from Britain, but and some others. And we said the key principles were fundamentally, first of all, was free speech. That if we can't talk to one another, we can't, no matter what people got to say. And around that, no to digital ID. That was a fundamental principle. No to jab mandates. We must have privacy and we must have autonomy to make decisions. And it's difficult to have informed consent if you don't know anything, but at least you have to have a principle, right? Of if you're being told all these things and you trust or don't trust them, but at least you've got to be able to make a decision, even if the things we're told are not true, right? You've got to be able to say, well, and this was because so many of our frontline staff, 100,000 of them are saying they were not going to take a mandatory jab, a procedure a year in. And we launched then what was the Together Declaration in 2021, and we got over 200,000 signatures to say we wouldn't have Papers, Please society, and we had a lot of people sign. And then we got another 160,000 or so against the jab mandate, and we took all of those to Downing Street, as well as organising all sorts of things. So we'd organise small events, bigger events, campaigns, calls to action. So we'd have groups of people around the country and ambassadors who'd go to National Health. And we have the National Health System, the NHS, the National Health Trust, or we'd go to universities where they're saying students had to have a procedure or they would be locked in. And there were all these things going on. And we were giving out leaflets and holding up posters and talking to people locally. But then regionally and nationally, we were lobbying MPs and councillors. And we have something called a 360 approach because we have many people involved with us from different experiences, marketing, promotions, lobbying events, and music and all of that. And we tried to create a situation where we can go from the grassroots and have people on the ground knocking on doors, talking to people, to the cabinet and parliament and MPs and councillors, and lobby everyone and the press. But we will remember back then, it's not really changed so much, but particularly back then, the press were very similar, saying many things all about that stuff. And this is where the online stuff became so important as well. And obviously shows like yours and others, where people, and like what happened with Twitter and Elon Musk and all the other platforms, which we could get into. But basically, that's a very long way of saying we were launched then, coming out of some other things as an umbrella organization, to challenge things and put the public first. So if everybody was properly asked the question, and we all looked at the costs and we all looked at the benefits, and we were able to honestly assess what they called the science, but like if we were able to honestly say, well, is this a risk to everyone? And a bit more maybe like some did in Sweden and elsewhere. But if we were able to do that and then everybody said, you know what, I just don't want to work, I just don't want to go out. Well, if that's what everybody really decided in a democracy, then you might have to go, all right, fair enough, maybe I'll leave this country or I'll keep fighting that battle. But that wasn't what happened. What happens never is that. What happens is we're ordered and told and nudged with psychology units and spy units and press and all these things that have come out since that stuff, which we can get into. So we're very much about saying we need free speech. We need to be able to have the public honestly engaged with, and that our privacy and our fundamental rights, our freedoms, that we are really have a duty to defend and uphold, but we are the beneficiaries of. We are the people that many fought for a long time, for hundreds of years, actually, since the Magna Carta on onwards. But certainly in the modern period, the Enlightenment, the idea of democracy, freedom, privacy, rights, all of those, tolerance, all of those things, and then the relationship between the government and the citizen or subject and what that means. So really, Together was born out of that, and has then continued from there to go on with various things we could talk about.
You're the Voice is brought to you by Trezor, the original Bitcoin hardware wallet company pioneering the development of self-custody for crypto assets since 2013, empowering individuals with an open source device, enabling beginners and experts to easily and securely hold their coins. I find my Trezor super easy to use and recommend it to my friends and family. Enjoy my 5% discount on Trezor products by clicking the link in the show notes and using the code EFLAT. Self-custody is powerful, but what if someone forces you to unlock your wallet? Bitcoin settles instantly, and that freedom can also be a risk. BitVault is the first Bitcoin wallet built to protect against both physical attacks and digital hacks. It creates a banking-grade vault on-chain with 2 of 3 multi-sig, time-delayed transactions, 2 hours to 15 days, giving you space to react, trustless recovery after 1 year, works with trusted hardware wallets, open source, and built with one focus: beyond keys, protecting humans. Only 42 lifetime subscriptions are available at $199 forever. Head over to bitvault.sv to sign up and use code EFLAT for 10% off.
Okay, and then we crossed paths during COVID when you guys were very active, and I see that today you are kind of regrouping, rearming everyone in the community around you to take action again and to be active with what's happening around the digital ID in the UK. And so can you, looking from the outside on the state of things in general in the UK, what I am observing is a society that is slowly deteriorating in terms of values, in terms of safety, in terms of ideology. We see a lot of influence from the global organizations, the woke ideology that comes from the left side of the US, etc. We're seeing borders opening like crazy, like I've never seen before, with a lot of immigration, a big issue in the UK. And I'm seeing also the rise of the ever present climate agenda to justify a lot of limitations on your freedom of movement and taxing you, and just like everything is clamping down at the same time. Not that we haven't anticipated that when we first kind of got to know what's behind the whole COVID agenda, but now we're actually seeing it playing out. And then they're pulling out that card of the digital ID, first saying it's to justify the open borders and the immigration, and then just everything, like the truth is coming out, and it's not even about that, it's about everything else. So, take us through, this is like my outsider view of what's happening in the UK, and obviously with CBDCs looming, and, I'm in Bitcoin, so I'm seeing how the government is kind of against free money, free sovereignty for people with Bitcoin. And so it's kind of like disheartening to see the state of things in the UK. So can you give us your view of what's happening?
It's like a nice commercial advert for a holiday to come to Britain. Look at all the good things.
I'm sorry.
No,
I know,
well,
and I love the UK.
I'm sorry.
I have so many friends. I love.
I know you do. I know. Yeah, we all love you. But I mean, it is so. There are serious challenges that we're facing. They're enormous. But I would say that this is a consequence, a result of several decades of things, and partly these technocrats that all share many ideas, that don't like the public, that think that they're global institutions and their global ideas is a kind of like there's an us and them, and they're the ones that have got these great ideas. And a lot of it involves monitoring and tracking and surveilling and limiting. And a lot of it involves the idea that we're all a bad lot, we being the masses of people, regular people, and that they're the good, the great and the good. And they don't have any of the redeeming features of any of the older elites that went before them. They don't have any of a sense of like, we want to like really transform things for the benefit, or like a patrician outlook. They're much more about, you lot are terrible, you're rabid, you eat too much, you consume too much, there's too many of you, you're killing the planet. They've got this attitude. And so in many ways, everything's about
useless eaters, right?
Yeah, consuming, avaricious, toxic, and they use all these terms. They're very, very nasty, but basically looking as a reflection of how they really see themselves, but they're perhaps not conscious of it, and they project that onto the public because they don't have a relationship with the public. And so what happens is every impulse that they've got is to limit and restrict things, and also to project these ideas that have been fermenting for some time. So some within the elite have wanted lots of people moving around everywhere, partly because it's very cheap labor. Right. So some who are globalists and they want cheap labor. And some like the idea that there's nothing good about British culture or society, or to say that there's anything good in history or tradition is racist. And there's that view, and that's become a big thing. But the issue is, since lockdowns and COVID, and we saw them, I think nobody could avoid seeing. You couldn't like kind of go pretend not to see what was going on during COVID and lockdowns. Even if you went along with the arguments, everyone saw what happened, right? No one got away from it. You locked down. Then lots of things came out afterwards, but we're on to a new thing. Now it's the climate emergency. Like, everyone's going to die. So now we've got to shut the roads off using emergency traffic orders under lockdowns to keep the air better. Complete lies. And we did lots of reports that came out that showed these things, and they were published, so that was good. We had a big campaign, No to Net Zero, but it's still the people, the elite, many of them, and many in the newspapers were pushing this idea until they all realized we're not going to be able to do we're going to be able to do net zero. In fact, we're one of the few countries that are trying to do all these things, but actually, what's that mean? We're not going to keep the lights on. And so gradually, firstly, the Conservatives realized it. They were pushing it enormously. And then now Labour's and everyone's sort of realising it. So that is sort of crumbling, although they still have a minister that's pushing it really hard. We have a minister called Ed Miliband. But most sensible people realise that's not going to be able to work and happen. But in that conversation, all of the ideas are wrapped up in it. We're just mad, bad and dangerous. We need control. We need to be limited. We need to be stifled, regulated. And we saw that the discussions around our streets, shutting them down and having cameras everywhere and fining people and not engaging with the public. We have these things called low traffic neighbourhoods and clean air zones or ultra low emission zones, or there's a range of different names they call them. But many citizens fought back, and we worked for a good 2 years, year and a half after all those things with lockdowns, with many groups who are businesses and residents who fought back against the councils. And there's some very wealthy green billionaires, people like Mike Bloomberg and Chris Hone and others, and people know Bill Gates and others, but they all fund certain things, and they fund some of these groups to push this locally because they don't want a national debate. So these things are all going on with a discussion of 15-minute cities, smart cities. They all sound very smart. It sounds fantastic. A lot of people, who wouldn't want it? Like a smart city, that sounds smart, right? And just to say, if we love technology, right? We're not like, oh, we want to just, I mean, I like going sea swimming and detaching, but we know that so we couldn't do this, we couldn't fly places, we couldn't communicate. Technology is a good thing if we harness it in the right way. Yeah. What the problem is that there's always got to be a relationship that's understood between the state and the citizen, and then how technology is used. So we got a situation where there was an attempt to impose digital ID, and our friends in Australia and Canada and elsewhere, when we fought back against the jab mandates and the vaccine passports, they said, good luck, but I don't think you're going to win that. Now, there were many reasons, or all of us all together, many people fight, and we pushed that back and we won. But now they're coming, as you say, really hard. But it's not just this discussion of a brick card and a digital ID. There is all sorts of infrastructure that has been developing over the years. People have heard of things like the Online Safety Act, how children will be able, they says to protect children, but in a way it makes us all children, because in the end you'd have to have biometrics to sign on to prove you're not a child, right? Or there's a lot, at least 10 or 12 bits of legislation that have been pushing towards this. But the key thing is now they're announcing it. They're saying it out loud, right? Keir Starmer's come out from them not having it in a manifesto and not having it anywhere. They're now saying we're going to have, as you said, originally they said we're going to have digital ID to stop the boats, and everyone laughed and made fun of them. So how are you going to do that? What's that? They got in Germany, Italy, France, they all have national ID cards, digital biometrics. They've got lots of people coming on boats and across land. How that isn't stopping them. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, no, not really. What we're going to do is going to be for your health. It's going to be for the children. And it's going to be to make everything convenient and really lovely and good. And everyone's like, what? So already 3 million people have signed a petition against doing it. But that's just one piece. And many people have still not had the conversations.
I want to introduce you to Abundant Minds because they take a very different approach to Bitcoin mining. Most people buy Bitcoin, but the smart ones mine it straight into self-custody. With Abundant Minds, you can do it without giving up your privacy. Abundant Minds was founded by Bo and Christine Marie Turner, a couple who lost more than $500,000 to providers making empty promises. Instead of walking away, they built a company that raises the industry standard and puts client first, and that's why I like them. With Abundant Minds, you own your machines. They never touch your Bitcoin, never skim a revenue share, and you choose your own mining pool. Their customer care is unusual. Clients speak to a real person for self-custody education, privacy consulting, and even visiting their site. They serve clients from around the world, but US investors specifically enjoy a big tax benefit and 100% bonus depreciation. This is more than just mining Bitcoin. It's about freedom, privacy, and purpose. You can book a free strategy call, see how it works, and mine some of your first Bitcoin for free with a special offer for my audience. Learn more on abundantminds.com/efrat. Tired of feeling like your freedom and future are fading away? Do you live in a country with growing inflation, crazy housing prices, weird culture, and a chaotic economy? You're not alone, and my friend Mikkel Thorpe and his team at Expat Money can help. Mikkel is the world's leading expat consultant on a mission to free you from broken systems. He's been an expat for 25 years, lived in 9 different countries, and has helped hundreds of people with second residencies and passports, offshore banking, international investing, and many other essential tools. If you're serious about protecting your wealth and your family, it's not enough to hope things will get better. You need a plan B in another country. The team at Expat Money can help you build it legally, safely, and without wasting years of research. Visit expatmoney.com/eflat and leave your details for a follow-up.
So our campaign at the moment is to remind everyone that they're going after directors of companies. So there's about 8 million directors in Britain, and they're trying to use the government and the tax and what we call Companies House and our accountants to say, you've got to now go on digital ID. Now, in some countries, you have national ID cards and it's different, right? So if you already have some of these things, it's a slightly different discussion. It's not completely, because there's a difference between I haven't got a card on me, but like just a plastic card and all that, and then they're with a digital infrastructure, right? But here we got a situation where people already have given passports and driver's license to their accountants, and the people know that. But the government's trying to have a joined up system all through their one login. Now, their one login system has had so many problems already, many data breaches. And we've seen from around the world data breaches, hundreds of millions of them, with all the big tech companies, people selling data, people using it for cybercrime, people using it for to what I forgot the word, but to use it to go after people, to bribe them, to do all sorts of things.
Yeah, to scam, of course.
That's one part of it, the breaches, the data breaches, but then there's all the other questions of the privacy invasion of the others, which we'll come to. So they've got a one login system. But the thing is, now they're trying to get everyone on digital ID. And what we're saying is that we're not going to allow our directors to have that happen to them. We've got a campaign with an open letter and petition, but that's also going to all the councillors and MPs. And we've got people up and down the country doing events and rallies. There's a protest here on Saturday. And in Sunday, I'm actually debating the people that came up with this brick card idea at the Battle of Ideas. But altogether, it's not just that piece, right? There's directors, but there's the whole question of why should the state be able to see everything about what we do, how we spend our money, where we go on holiday, where we go at home, what we say online, where we go shopping, what kind of friends we've got. You've got the structure, if this happens, where everything can be monitored. And then also, if whoever they are, and they might be really lovely now, I mean, they're not, but even if they were really lovely, the next guys may not be so lovely, right? And then you've got a situation like we see in parts of the world, parts in China and North Korea and elsewhere.
Hey, Alan, in Israel, we have it for 11 years.
Yeah.
We have it. This is, we have the one login, we have everything. I have it because I didn't know that it was bad when they started it. You know, I only kind of quote unquote woke up 5 years ago. So I wasn't even aware of the dangers and the risks back then, like most people are today. And so I have it. Most people in Israel have it. It's all digitized. It's all centralized. The real risk is the centralization.
Yeah.
The fact that they hold everything in one database, like you said, and not only could be breached and cyber attacked, but also the fact that they can have such easy, quick access from one database to another because it's all connected in one place. This is horrible.
Absolutely.
And you know, as someone who already has it, I'm telling everyone, do everything you can to stop it because it's horrible. You know that now they've started digitizing our vaccine passports from when we were kids. I'm 45 years old.
Right.
And I have a printed vaccine passport.
Yeah.
And my son as well. But they did a big project because Israel is a small country, 8-9 million people. It's not so difficult to digitize all that physical manual paperwork. So they sat down and digitized the kids' vaccine passports, and it's all now in that same one login database.
Yeah.
So when I go there, I can see my son's vaccine registry. It was never digital before. Next thing they'll do is they'll use, I don't know, maybe the IDF or some cheap labor they have to digitize my vaccine passport and put it in there. And then they'll be able to tell me, oh, you didn't take the COVID jab. You're not allowed to go in here or there.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a huge risk. Yes. Sorry for cutting.
No, it's exactly right. And it would be good maybe talk a bit more about that. But and also, Israel is a very particular, in many ways, it's a very particular country with very particular circumstances, and there's a relationship between the citizens and the state there that's a big discussion. But where people have agreed some things, like with your national IDs and all of that, for a long time. Whereas in other places, and certainly in Britain, that's not been the case. So in many ways, these leaps are huge in Britain. But your points are absolutely right. The other thing is, people in Britain the last few years have seen all sorts of things. We've seen debanking of people that are well known, but also not so well known, campaign groups, because of things that we've said. And if you get taken off a bank, you can't exist in society. Now, you mentioned central bank digital currency. We'll come on to that. But there's debanking. There's concerns about what we've been calling two-tier policing, but policing and the judges who, if you say some things like you might say about COVID or lockdowns or migration or borders, then you're not the right kind of person. And then you could end up now being put in prison or certainly getting a visit from the police. Whereas if you say other things, and they could be all sorts of things, they could be terrible things, right? Like people killed or died or whatever, or then you're not getting a visit because people think, well, that's all right because you're saying that about those people, about these. And so we've seen already that there's an approach that the state takes. We've seen that we've got more and more facial recognition of without agreeing it to. The police are doing it, and then they're saying they're going to do it in different places. We're seeing that biometrics and all this data linked. And the idea that, as you say, but the idea that it's centralized. So like now we talked about the fact that they've got areas with cameras in them and fines, but also if you don't recycle your refuse in the right way, you get fined in some councils. The idea that you're not behaving yourself or saying the right thing or going, you're doing too many car journeys or you're eating too many burgers, or it sounds silly, but think of the last 5 years, right? Well, if you'd have said to anyone, you're not allowed to sit two people in a park together because of some crazy thing. I mean, we had the police with drones chasing people who had a couple of kids who were playing snowballs or going for a walk. It was insane what had gone on, right? And so the idea now that you've got this central database with a state and governments that don't want to engage with the public. They hate the public. They're scared of the public. They think the public should just be told what to do, that we're in an emergency for the climate. Be quiet, shut up, we're doing it. We're in an emergency for this virus, whatever. Don't discuss it. There's no questions. Sit in the corner, put your mask on, lockdown. And if you don't do those things, we've also seen that in Portugal and Spain, there was a massive power cut recently, partly due to net zero, actually. But that if you have a power cut, what happens? What happens if not just a data breach, there are millions of older people and others who can't get on online and digital and don't want to. There's all sorts of people. And that's why we've got a digital bill of rights as well, Efrat, where we say, we understand technology is important and we want to keep developing technology, but we have to have the same amount of rights and privacy that we have in other areas. So you can't just listen to people's telephone conversations without a warrant. In Britain, you can't just look at them, if anyone writes letters anymore, but you can't just look at their mail. You have to have a warrant. You have to have a reason. You have to go to a court and say, I think that this guy, Alan, blah, 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 blah. And then they'll say, okay, you can have a warrant to go check his house. You can't just come into someone's house, right? We need the same thing in the digital arena. We need protections. We need to be able to not have an option that you can still participate in society without doing any of these things, right? And that must be enshrined. So that part of saying no to digital ID and challenging it is also saying, we must be able to continue as citizens engaging with all the things that we've got and not have this imposed. Because if they get the directors all to do it, there's 8 million of them, then they'll use the directors to get all the people working. And then they've got something happening for children with the children wellbeing bill. But within all of that, to track children, there's a digital ID. And then between that, and then there's a few million older people. That's pretty much everyone in Britain, right? So you've got, so that's the strategy of how they want to roll it out.
You know, by the way, the directors thing, this is a very similar tactic to what they did in Australia. During COVID, they said that the directors in Australia have to take the jab and otherwise they won't be able to work. But they've taken that group of directors in Australia and they attacked them directly. And Senator Malcolm Roberts was one of the people that obviously opposed it. Not that it helped, but that seems to be one of their favorite tactics to take like the director levels in the companies, because they have enough power to then mandate it to the rest of the companies. And then they, like you said, they cover a lot of people by using that strategy. So it's funny that they're pulling the same card again, and they're doing the same thing with the children again. So they're repeating a lot of the patterns that we've seen them exercising during COVID.
Yeah. And some of your audience, I mean, many of your audience will maybe just agree with us, but some might have questions. But even if they all agree, I'd say what we're trying to do is go out to people who don't agree with us or not really sure.
Right.
They could say, don't be so dramatic. Why are you so worried? That's a bit dystopian. Yeah. But you mentioned Australia and we saw what happened there. But we also look at things like Canada and what happened with the truckers and the idea of carrying into people's banks. And now that's happened here in Britain with these things as well. They're not just somewhere else. It wasn't Russia or North Korea. It was Canada with the truckers and Trudeau. And then what it was is here. And we saw people in Australia and New Zealand. We saw some of the craziest scenes there, like in Italy and Spain. Like, I couldn't believe some of the things we saw happening there. But then we've seen reactions and responses like that here. And what we're saying to people is, you don't even have to imagine it now, right? We've seen very clearly in the last period all these things and concerns. And so our goal is to get as many people engaged and fighting back. And, you know, one of the things, Efrat, as well, is that some people are like, oh, I've been telling you all along, or these people, you're all sheep or you're stupid. Well, we really try and encourage a sense of, look, listen, guys, this is where we're at. Can we all, and we can beat things and we can win things like we've done before. But also there is a sense that this is all too much for some. It's like, in a sense, it's all happened already. It's happening. There's the big powers. And what I would say is, we saw that conversation, but look what's happened in America. And whether anyone loves Donald Trump or hates, it doesn't matter so much about that. The people that are in the cabinet and the Trump moment in number 2, and look at what they were saying to some of those people, like Jay Bhattacharya and others, Robert Kennedy Jr. I mean, there are people now who are in power in America who they were being called all sorts of, and everyone's saying you'll never be able to change anything, you can't do anything. The point is, right now, there are big battles, as we all know, in society. And I'd say that everyone can become a leader within all of this. We'd encourage everyone to step up and participate, and in any way they can, right? Doesn't mean you have to be a public speaker. You might give some flyers out. You might host an event. You could do a show, whatever. You could do all of those things. You could stand. But these things are essential, and we are cutting through. I mean, there are people we're now getting not just the political parties who are saying, many of them are saying, and many of the members and some of the parties saying they will get rid of digital ID, they won't have it. But also just across the board, the cut through is much more, and the discussions with people is much more. And the question is, I think for everyone, is how we can always make sure that we can have as much of the freedom and democracy and privacy, because it is not given to us by these smart people, right? This is ours. It belongs to all of us, right? Our world, our nation, our freedom, somehow it's like we think, we have to beg for it and say, please let us have it. It's not theirs. It's ours, and we only can give it away.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's up to us to then reclaim it back. And I totally agree with you that this attitude of resignation and giving up and no, it's going to happen anyway, so why bother and all that, it's a slippery slope to nihilism in the end of the day, to like completely losing hope. And I totally understand that it's hard, and I have compassion for people who are experiencing hardship in their lives, because it is kind of challenging to live these days, just to kind of, live normal life. It's hard. I get it. But at the same time, if you don't look at all the different ways in which you can reclaim sovereignty over your life and demand your freedom and demand your rights, we're going to find ourselves in even more difficult situations that we are in right now. And so if anything, people have to kind of start learning about what's happening around them and be more aware of things. Look at other countries for examples, like you have given a few examples here, and also read about the capabilities of these technologies to kind of make yourself more like smarter about what could happen in the future if it lands in the wrong hands. So I totally agree with you that there's no room for hopelessness, and people need to educate themselves. That's why I am in Bitcoin and in freedom technologies, because I'm a techie, and I've realized that there are some technologies out there that could allow me for a way greater sovereignty and freedom levels that I've had before. Like, for example, just to give you one example, how freedom is being used for good, there is a protocol that was built a few years ago called Nostr, and I use it, and it's like today it's used mostly for social media, but it can be used for any type of data transfer. And so the first use case, which is social media, is implemented today with many, many, many apps because it's decentralized and there is no one central database to rule the data and the identity. And I own my own identity. So I have a private key and a public key. It's designed similarly to Bitcoin, and I hold the private key. I'm the only one. And I am the only one to sign my events and my data that I'm transferring and my posts and everything. So no one can scam my identity. And if it happens that one of the apps that I'm using to communicate with people over social media protocol, the Nostr protocol, is shut down by for any reason, let's say someone shut them down or they've shut down, I can take my identity that is connected to my social graph with all my followers connected to it and go to another app, a totally different app that just speaks to that protocol. And so I own my identity. I also own my followers. And as a content creator, it really is important to me. So it's not like Facebook. If they close me, I lose my 20,000 followers, or on YouTube, or, Telegram just banned me recently. So I lost 2 channels with 8,000 people, and there's nothing I can do about it. But in Nostr, if someone censors me or bans me, I can take my identity and my followers and then reopen my account in another app, and nothing happens because I own the identity. So this is a form of owning your own identity digitally, but this is for good. Like, this is mine. No state, no government has hold of this. I own the private key and I save it, and then I use it everywhere. And this is also connected to Bitcoin. So I can pass money to other people peer to peer without going through any third party. So there are amazing technologies being built, but people just don't know about them. And it's okay. It takes time. But the reason why I'm bringing that up is so that people know that technology is not always a bad thing. You know, yes, we are resisting a technology that is going to be used in a super bad way and in a centralized way. And we want to break that down and decentralize the control as much as possible. And if you're able to work with tech developers on technologies like that, on open source protocols, do it. Great. Build something else. Just opt out and build something else and start using that and bring people along, bring your friends. Or take any of the other roles that you, Alan, spoke about before. I think being active in life is like the number one thing. I think for our health and our our healthy soul, healthy mind, healthy spirit. It's so important.
I definitely agree. I think everyone's got to get a lot better at just making it familiar and understandable and digestible with Bitcoin and blockchain, everything, all of that, and like open source, what that means and how it works. And that's something that everyone should think about. We certainly need to more and talk about that more, about what that can all mean. And this, and the big fight of the states and others to control that arena and what that's going to mean. And the thing is that nothing's inevitable, of course, but what we're pointing to is like anything, is that we have to have protections in place, and we have to have the public strong and keeping an eye on pressure on things, because it's like free speech, right? You have the Constitution and you have the First Amendment, but there are always people who think there's too much of it, so let's suffocate it. And there are others who think we should have it for everyone. But that battle carries on. But sometimes it gets really bad, right? And some will want to. And so that's the point, to make sure that we ensure we have the protections that we need, as you say, to keep on having technology, but not having state technocrats that are able to limit and stifle and censor and control in all these areas. So, yeah.
So, Alan, so you're saying free speech. This is, I want to take you down that path for a second. So you mentioned before visits from the police, right? This is something that is now happening in the UK in the last few years. Can you talk a bit about that? Thousands of arrests of people saying things online, like give some examples maybe. And then what can people do to protect themselves in that sense, to still be able to speak, but not be arrested for it?
So 13,000 arrests last year. For not what they call non-crime hate incidents. So if George Orwell was writing a book now, he'd be they've basically taken so it's non-crime, so it's not a crime, a hate incident. So then what is a hate incident? Is it because you say to me, Efrat, well, your blue shirt looks a bit rubbish, and I go and I report Efrat and say Efrat said something that's really offensive and I felt unsafe. So then, now, obviously, sometimes when people go, well, not really. But actually, some of those things have happened a few years ago. If we look back at the Me Too movement, some of those things, but then they didn't go and get people who were they didn't listen to girls who were being gang raped in different cities in Britain, although some people did listen to them, but they ignored them, and some people encouraged them and got involved in it, local authorities. So those two things were also going on at the same time, by the way, in this country. Now, the reason I sort of say that is that I'm a free speech absolutist, right? So I know that most people are not. Well, I believe that, but I don't believe you should be allowed to get on a thing and say, I'll pay you this money to go and do something, right? So I don't even want to use the word KILL because someone will cut it and say I've said it. But, I don't believe, and there are laws about that, and that's real incitement to violence and making agreements and saying, go and do this thing I'm instructing you or telling you or asking you to do this.
Yeah.
Now, what's happened is people have started saying that when you say things that might be offensive, and this started it's been around since the Salman Rushdie problem that we've had in Britain, where people were saying he's offending us. This was 30 years ago. They called for a fatwa on Salman Rushdie, and he went into hiding. And again, he was attacked in the States. Recently, people will know about that. But from that came the idea is you cannot offend anyone. We've seen Charlie Hebdo. We've seen lots of terrible things where people have been killed. Really recently, Charlie Kirk, obviously, terrible things. But in Britain, what it's meant is that language in the last decade, particularly, but much more recently, but the thing, if you say, oh, I'm offended, on the college campuses, people have been shut down. The idea you're not allowed to say that it's offensive. People have been cancelled for saying, I think a woman is a woman, a man is a man, and it's simple. People have been, all these things have happened. And now what's happened is people get reported to the police and the police are monitoring social media posts, right? So people will complain about Alan or Efrat and they'll say, well, they're saying these things about masks or whatever, or about women or men, borders. And then like Graham Linehan, who is a comedian that came back from the States, he got met by 5 armed police because he did 3 posts where he had said some things. And also the fact that people report you all the time. Now, we've seen, for instance, a really couple of good, terrible examples. One is Bernice Bufforth, who is a friend of Together, but she put some posts out during one particular one during the Southport riot. She had 6 police come to her house. We've seen Alison Pearson, where the police came to her house and she still doesn't know exactly why. We never get, because partly the process is the punishment, right? You get the police come over, you may get arrested. There's all this stuff going on and you have to go through it, and then you might get out and there might be no further action. But there are a lot of people who are arrested and in prison. Now, many of the people who put posts up, or some who went to protest but did things like shouted at a dog or shouted at the police, they've been arrested. And because some of them did not have legal representation and they've never been involved in the police, and the grandparents, Peter Lynch was a grandfather, he ended up killing himself in prison because these people had never been, and they didn't really have proper representation. They didn't know about proper representation. And we would say to everyone, just don't speak to them and say, no, plead not guilty. You have to and get a really good lawyer. We work with the Free Speech Union. There are others. The Free Speech Union's done really brilliant work in this area. But, Together, contact us. We've got, there are people. But the point is that there are on a weekly, monthly basis, there are scores of people who are still being arrested for these non-crime hate incidents or hate speech. Meanwhile, the government is saying they want to have an Islamophobia law, which means that if you start saying things and say, well, I think there's an issue with radical jihadism, for instance, or is it a problem that mainly Pakistani men in Britain have been the rape gangs and they're Muslim? Is that why is that? They say, well, that's Islamophobic. You can't say, which is the very reason, by the way, many people did not talk about these things because they were scared of being called racist.
Yeah.
Others were involved in it. Apparently local police, local MPs, like councillors, not getting MPs so much, but councillors, social service, terrible. And we still haven't got to the bottom of it all, nowhere near. And now they want to introduce new speech laws and new speech codes around Islamophobia and others. And what that really means is, and it's like with the Online Safety Act, where they say it's to protect young children, but then you find that you can't say certain words or you're in breach of it. And partly they outsource it, Efrat. Partly they give it to Silicon Valley and they say, we fine you either $5 million or 10 million, or you get 2 years in prison, or you get 10% of your turnover in this country. Now, that can be a lot of money. So then what happens is that in all the big platforms in Silicon Valley, they see this legislation in Britain, and in the European Digital Services Act, they've got a similar thing for the whole 440 million people. And so then they end up outsourcing censorship to them, but still at the same time, as well as having to verify to get onto the internet soon if we have digital ID, then even when we've been on there, you can't say certain things, or you'll be visited by the police and knock at the door, or worse. We've seen countless examples. A veteran shared a post of a trans logo and it was turned around and it looked a bit like a swastika. And many people had shared it and he just reshared it, but the police went round to arrest him. And again, we've got people like We Are Fair Cop and Harry Miller and those guys doing good stuff with that with the police. Many people are fighting back now, you see. They're challenging it. Okay. And also, and this is the thing, there are other people saying things that have a different political point of view that are not being arrested or not being held accountable for these things. So the public is getting very furious because one guy called Nick Lowles, who runs a group called Hope Not Hate, also did a post during Southport, had got it wrong and deleted it, the same as some others had done, but nothing ever happened to him. And he had 100,000 reposts of it, saying that these people had done something to a Muslim woman, and then they hadn't. And yet some people did get beaten up because there's all part of a climate that's created. He says, sorry, nothing happens. I'm not saying something should happen to him because I think that we should be able to say all sorts of things. Most things are legal. We should be able to, they might be horrible. We may not want to hear them, but we have to be able to discuss them and thrash them out. But it's not the same. It's not the same with the protests, how different protests have been changed. But then recently, there's been a mega ultra reaction. So now what's happened is the government has been accused of these things. And now what it's doing is saying, right, we're going to clamp down on everything, right? If you feel unsafe, we're going to stop a protest. They've prescribed a whole organization. It's called Palestine Action because of some of the acts that some of them have done. Rather than using the laws they've got to hold them accountable for what they've done, but not to prescribe a whole organization, which a lot of them are out with placards or posts or just standing and saying that people may like it, they may hate it. But the problem is once the state starts saying, we're banning you here, we're banning you, what's next? The farmers, people who don't want lockdowns or net zero. And we've got this climate where what you say is being weaponized and people are being arrested for it. What if you go out and protest, these things are being weaponized and all that. And actually, what it ends up doing is it just strengthens the technocrats who are rudderless, and they're very dangerous because they're weak authoritarians. So when you're a strong authoritarian, you don't need to do too, but you can have a functioning society where people are critical because you're there's no big threat to us. This lot are petrified, right? And it's dangerous because they're not in control. They're reactive all the time. And that's partly why we saw such responses, but in some countries against lockdown protests and some of it early on here. But they're nervous and they don't feel confident. They're out of control. And these legislation, the laws they keep passing to try and deal with things, knee-jerk impositions are really dangerous. And so the thing is that now many people are talking about these things in the public, but as new things emerge, similarities continue. So you have to keep. This is a kind of a big fight, I suppose. And also the people this is the other thing. Many people make new friends. They fought against lockdowns. And then these new things happen, right? Like Russia or Ukraine, or like Israel and Gaza.
Israel,
people argue, but the thing is, the same core principles are still there, right? You can't say I'm for free speech, but not when those people say it, right? So that's a thing for all of us to remember, kind of thing, just as with that.
Yeah, I was attacked by some fellows of ours from the COVID freedom movement when I spoke about October 7th because they didn't like what I had to say. Like, fuck off. Did you forget what we went through? You know, it's very easy to forget as long as it suits your position, you're okay with that. And once it doesn't suit your position, you're against it. But then you forget that if you don't allow free speech to just be there and respectfully let people voice their opinions, then this is going to come back and haunt you.
Yeah.
100%, 1,000%. Okay, my question to you is, you said 3 million people signed the petition. What are the next steps on that front? What's going to happen with those signatures?
Well, that's a petition that has gone to have, firstly, it's a petition, it's one that's through the government to get them to debate it in Parliament.
Okay.
And you have to get 100,000. And then the government's already responded saying, well, we're doing it. So that can get more people, but what we're doing is we do slightly different petitions. It's not so much to get a debate in Parliament once that's happened. Ours are used then to do calls to action, to get people. So we have people, and we know their postcodes, if they're directors or not, and we get them in different regions speaking to their councillors and MPs, where we focus our campaigning activity. So doing it, and we have elections in May, and like with the farmers, we did a big campaign.
Hold on. I want to make sure that people get this. Like there's a lot of details here, and I'm going to get you to give me the links to it so we can also put it in the show notes and everything. So you're saying the petition with the 3 million is already gone. I mean, they're going to do a debate about it in Parliament. That's fine, right?
Yeah.
And then what's the next one?
Well, they're actually saying we're doing what they're doing. Thank you, but we're carrying on anyway. That's what they're saying.
Yeah, I know. Okay.
Our open letter petition, this next one that we've got, is to say that we will not have directors being forced to take on digital ID. Great. And that open letter petition is going to people like the Department for Trade and Business, going to the Cabinet, going to the members of Parliament for Labour, Conservative, Reform, Liberal, Democrat, across the board, Scotland, elsewhere, then being used for things like the Institute of Directors, the Small Business Federation, the trade associations, getting all of it, and creating all round, let them understand that this is not going to be a simple thing. You're just going to do this. And there is opposition, and getting the public behind it as well. So we're getting all the signatures going, but there are also going to be things that are part of a strategy that we found has worked really well, to email people, to phone them, to go to their surgery, to post about it, to then get the press involved and see that people are doing it, making videos as they go along saying, I'm not going to do this, put it everywhere, LinkedIn, in the business communities. So people think I'm not on my own. They get this email from their accountant or company's house. They say, you now need to do this digital ID. They're like, what? So we've got a letter explaining to the accountants and also company's house why we won't be doing this. And we'd encourage you to stop asking everyone to do it and not do it yourself. So we're just creating some tools and abilities for people to say no and say it's not needed. There's no reason for it, and we don't have to have it, and we're not going to do it. And by the way, guys, you're going to have a big fight. You're talking like you think it's all done. You have to still go to Parliament. You have to still go back and forth, unless you're just going to do an emergency legislation, which I can't see them doing right now. If they want a peaceful country, that would be a really bad move, right? But then they have to go, and it has to go through process. So there's time for us to push this all back, although it's mid-November, it's starting for new directors. And anyone who's a new director who wants to set up a company is going to want to set up a company. We know that, right? And they know that, so they're going to try. But there's millions who exist, and many of them are very deeply unhappy. We've got people saying we're going to close our companies here or move to different places. And we've already had a lot of people move because of the taxes. A lot of people are like, we're just not doing this, not with the taxes that you've done. And just to say that, I was going to say that during the last election of the local councillors we have in May, we work with the farmers. We've helped a new farming organisation set up with Farmers to Action, where they went round to all the areas in the rural areas where the votes were, and all of them in where were Labour, they lost their positions, their seats, and many of them ended up being Reform. But because Reform said they would get rid of inheritance tax for everyone. Now, in the same way, when people are arguing about the digital ID, the government knows that even its own MPs, many of them are deeply unhappy about it. And there's a new party that's set up partly from Labour people that's happening, and all the other parties are saying they're against it. It's a big fight, right? This is not going to be easily won for, and we're gonna win this part of the fight, Efrat. It's going to take a lot. We are going to win this bit, but it's going to continue, and it's going to have multiple forms, right? But I know that we can push this back, but everyone's got to get behind it. So it's a lot of work, you know. It feels like it hasn't stopped since lockdown.
No, you've been on a roll for the past 4 or 5 years. Okay, so you're going to give me the link to the open letter petition, and then what are the upcoming events that you have? Yeah,
so this weekend we're going to be at the Battle of Ideas, which is in Westminster in Church House. There's a few thousand people. It's a couple of hundred speakers with sessions and panels all day. It's really good. I'm on in the mornings, Saturday and Sunday. There's a protest on Saturday afternoon in London. And then we have a big event, our big annual event on the 16th of November, Sunday, 16th of November, where some really good people are speaking, like Jay Bhattacharya and Kaizen and a number of others. So people should really try and come to that. That if you are able to be in Britain or London, we do have some streaming of it too. And we have then some other events around the coast. You can we'll be live streaming it so people can log in. But if you can come, it's a really good experience. Then we've got some events around the country in Wales, Scotland, and the north of England and the south. I speak quite a lot in different places, just mainly because we're trying to get the message out and connect with more people, to get the public, speak to friends and neighbours and colleagues. And so we really ask people, obviously, to become a supporter, but we like them to become a member if they like what we're saying, because we don't have big sponsors or big donors. People say, like, where'd you get your money from? We get it from members, right? So people who pay £5 a month or something, whatever they do, some students less. But if people think that this is important and they want to help it continue, obviously we want people to volunteer, to get involved, to help, but also becoming a member is really important, because that helps it. It means we can do more.
And where's the best place that they can be updated? Because there are things happening all the time. Is it on your X, or is it on the Together website? Yeah, mainly, I mean, X is good for immediately. So at Together Dec, but also on our website's good, togetherdeclaration.org. We say a lot of the main things there. They can sign up to be a member there as well. Yes. Okay. Exactly. Okay, wonderful. What's the immediate call to action for people right now? Well, the immediate call to action is, I would love everyone to become a member, and I'd love everyone to get involved in this campaign against digital ID. The digital ID is the key thing right now. Everything else is important, but this is the thing. So if you really want to do foundational, right? Yeah, exactly. So this is the thing to stand on, and we can win this part of it. And when you fight and win, it's really good in a world where people say there's nothing you can ever do and whatever. But it's going to take, it's going to be a fight, right? They're saying they're going to carry on and they dig down. So it's not going to be, hey, it's going to be a fight. And so the call to action is, please get involved, and we can all serve in the best way we can, right? Everyone will know what that means for them. If it means printing some leaflets off and putting them in the local cafe and up and down the street and in the library and talk to people and have a little meet, that's cool, right? If it means you're going to say, right, I've just sold my company. Let's say someone's got a few $1 million and they want to give it, cool, right? I just throw that in. But I mean, it's whatever it is. If you are young and you want to do social media and you want to help out, it's lots of things, right? However, people, be what you can be to make it something that we can all get it done together. Perfect. And Alan, anything else you want to add before we're we're going to our last question of what gives you hope.
Well, things like this give me hope. What I mean by that is meeting new people and people when I was in a previous situation. And if you'd ever said, well, imagine the governments and they're all going to try this, and you think, oh, what? And then you lose some friends or associates along the way, but you meet new people and you have new brothers and sisters in arms, right? Where you do things and you learn new things and you get inspired and you're like, wow, this is, and I never would have wanted this, but actually, can you imagine if we didn't have these? So that is a thing that gives me hope, right? That you meet amazing, brilliant, and I genuinely think that most people are amazing and brilliant and beautiful and decent, and that I think that's the human story. But we're also capable of all sorts of things, right? And that also is history, and so it's important that we're able to all have as much of a say, because the thing that keeps everyone honest, and that keeps everyone honest, is having as much of the public saying things and being strong as possible. Where things go, if the public's got strong muscles and asserts ourselves, all the things we see, right, and seen in history, but you can't really have them because the public is saying, this is what we want, this is how we want it. And generally, it's not the public that does mad things. It's the public in the last 100 years, for instance, that has helped transform things with civil rights and all sorts of things. It's not the smart people writing legislation. So I think that gives me hope, the sense of the belief in what's possible, but also in protecting what's so valuable and beautiful. And also, look, I mean, there's mad stuff in the world, but we live in a beautiful world. I mean, there's a lot. So in the midst of everything and some tragedy, and in your part of the world, people don't need. In my part of the world, people talking about tragedy, you know what that means, right? But in darkness, there's also a lot of light and beauty. And the important thing is to do what we can in our way to help make it be the thing we more want to see, right? Otherwise, other people are going to do it. That's the thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank God for people like you. Thank God for your spirit. Thank God for everything you do, your action, your wisdom. I thank you so much for sharing yourself so generously and for fighting this fight. You are doing the Lord's work. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Ifra. I really appreciate you having me on, and that's very kind. Thank you.
My pleasure. Okay. So thanks, Alan. Good luck. And I'm going to put all those links. So if you want to follow Alan or Together, please do that and please support their work. It's amazing.
And thank you for doing what you're doing. It's really appreciated, Efrat.
My pleasure. Thanks for being with us. Please take a minute to give this episode a like, a comment, and subscribe or follow. And please share it with your friends so they can also get value and choose to take some positive action in their lives. Till next time.